Welcome to the Bruno e Linzio transmission, episode 6. Hello, Linzio. How are you?
Episodio 6? Dio. Ciao di nuovo, caro Bruno a Milano. Come stai?
Oh, I'm doing quite well, thank you. How about you?
No, questa settimana non sto bene. Sono preoccupato per le elezioni di medio termine in America.
You're worried about the midterms in the States, huh?
I'm worried sick about them. I think in 2 days' time, we're going to be saying to each other, it's all over. We'll be able to console ourselves that we savored these last 2 years. I certainly did. I know you did too. We made the most of them, celebrated them, pinched ourselves many times to see if we were really awake. But I think come Wednesday of this week, it'll be Pelosi and Schumer back in charge. And in a sane, rational, decent world, that could not happen. But I very much fear that it's about to happen. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, as usual, I'm a little more optimistic than you.
Oh, good. Persuade me, persuade me.
Well, I still think that well, there's this idea that there's this Blexit that Kanye West, the entertainer, has somehow persuaded vast swaths of the black population to vote for Republicans. I severely doubt this. However, there is no need for that. If the white people turn out to vote, essentially, then the results will be positive. And however much the Democratic head count is unfavorable, the enthusiasm behind Trump is still enormous and positive. People are still very much enthused and ready to fight for Trump. So as long as the base goes to vote, doesn't do it's not, we don't have Romney anymore, so there's not Republicans staying at home, hopefully. And as long as everybody goes out to vote, I think the results will be positive. Although I am a little bit worried about the Georgia gubernatorial elections, where this woman Stacey Abrams, who is a far left, this black woman, the first black woman governor. Well, I'm I'm a little worried about that because, of course, the demographic shift in Georgia has been extremely drastic. People have not talked about this yet. We always talk about California and Texas being on the verge, but Georgia is on the verge of becoming a minority-majority state, as they say, and this will have very big consequences. The black population, of course, is, as usual, as always has been, around 30% in Georgia, and Stacey Abrams is predicted to get around 90% of the black vote. So even a small number of Hispanics can shift the election results very drastically, and I'm a little worried about that.
Well, Trump was there today and they were hanging from the rafters. So maybe it's time for me to sound a note of optimism. But then I immediately think of that awful Gillum in Florida, who's a known crook, a complete fraud, charlatan, demagogue running up against a very decent Republican, DeSantis, wonderful human being, and that Gillum, they're neck and neck. Again, I say, in a sane, rational, decent world, that couldn't happen. But the underlying reason for my pessimism is that, yes, I agree, the Trump base is still really enthusiastic, but it's not enough if all the Democrats come out to vote. Remember, Hillary got the majority of the popular vote. And this is such a salutary reminder of the infinite wisdom of the founding fathers and the Constitution in establishing the Electoral College as a buffer against unbridled majority rule, against mob rule. But in these elections, we have no such buffer. It's straight out majorities in this place and that place. And the zombies are in the majority. That's the reality we have to confront. Where, in effect, we've got to a point where the three branches of government are academia, the media, and Hollywood. And among them, they've contrived to produce the stupidest and most militantly mindless generation ever. And I saw a survey the other day, and 3 people out of 4 did not know, could not name the 3 actual branches of government. And you know how we were talking about Plato and Aristotle and their politics a few weeks back, and whatever the differences between them, they both knew that the great danger of democracy is mob rule leading directly to tyranny. That's what we have in America. This is a mindless mob. The zombies preponderate, and that's why I'm pessimistic about Tuesday.
Yes, well, if you'll indulge me, I'm going to quote Dr. Hans Hermann Hoppe. He is an Austrian economist and a true freedom fighter, and a fighter for truth, unlike the Ayn Rand Institute people. He fights for truth, and he goes wherever the truth may lead. And I have a little quibble about what you just said about democracy, because remember that Hillary won the popular vote.
Popular vote, yep.
Because of California. So,
yeah, but that's what I'm saying about the Electoral College, that we're protected from the insanity of California.
Right, right. So on this note, on keeping in mind that it is California, so it's one state out of the union, and if we do have complete democracy, or popular vote, we would get that result. Let me just read this piece from the book Democracy, the God That Failed, perfect title. And this is the 4th chapter, called On Democracy, Redistribution, and the Destruction of Property. Okay, so imagine a world government, democratically elected according to the principle of one man, one vote. What would the probable outcome of an election be? Most likely, we would get a Chinese-Indian coalition government. And what would this government most likely decide to do in order to satisfy its supporters and be reelected? The government would probably find that the so-called Western world had far too much wealth, and the rest of the world, in particular China and India, far too little, and that a systematic wealth and income redistribution would be necessary. Or imagine that in your own country, the right to vote were expanded to 7-year-olds. While the government would not likely be staffed of children, its politics would most definitely reflect the legitimate concerns to have adequate and equal access to free french fries, lemonade, and videos. With these thought experiments in mind, there can be no doubt about the consequences which resulted from the process of democratization. that began in Europe and the US in the second half of the 19th century and has come to fruition since the end of World War I. The successive expansion of the franchise and finally the establishment of universal adult suffrage did, within each country, what a world democracy would do for the entire globe. It set in motion a seemingly permanent tendency toward wealth and income redistribution.
Right. Well, I can report that exactly that has been reflected in the last couple of days here in New Zealand, where our far left Prime Minister, who rather resembles that woman, what's her name from New York, the socialist, Occasional Cortex. We have a Prime Minister just like that, who sounds exactly the same, who told her party conference over the weekend that she's been receiving lots of requests from kids for free stuff, and her government is listening.
Of course it is.
This is actually not, I should also report, a majority government. It did not get the majority or even a plurality of votes, but it hooked up with another party to form a coalition. But that what you're talking about, what he's talking about there, has been going on since time immemorial, which is exactly why Plato and Aristotle, way back then, were concerned about it, and which is why I propose a coalition of the civilized that ought to rise up throughout the Western world, throughout the Anglosphere and continental Europe. Every civilized country on earth should now make a concerted move to restrict the franchise so that morons can't vote. People in America who don't know the three branches of government, no way should they have the right to vote. Now, maybe raising the voting age to 60 might achieve it all in one fell swoop, but I think it needs to be systematic. Probably in America, you probably need a constitutional amendment. I don't know how it would work exactly, but the founding fathers were, I repeat, intent on making sure, among many other things, that there couldn't be a tyranny of the mob. Note that what the Democrats, the social justice warriors, and all the rest of them are now demanding is the abolition of the Electoral College because it's part of the white male slave-owning patriarchy. And the next thing, they'll be demanding the renunciation of the Constitution because it was written by white male patriarchal slave owners. This is the ridiculous situation, not just ridiculous, but tragic, into which America has fallen. So I'm afraid at this point you still haven't dissuaded me from my overweening pessimism.
Yes, well, the positive note of all of this is, as you said, the three branches of government are Hollywood, the media, and the lying press, or how academia, right?
Yeah.
And the positive note is that so many people have been awoken, as they say.
Awoke.
Right, awoke.
Awoke.
Yeah,
I know this better than you.
yeah, they've been woked by. Yeah, so they've been woked by the president. The president. Remember, Donald Trump is your president. By his election. So people don't believe in the media. People certainly don't believe in academia. And increasingly, they don't listen to whatever Hollywood has to say. Remember the Grammy Awards and all this ridiculous awards where all the leftists essentially get in a circle and jerk each other off and they tell us how so wonderful the Democrats are and how they're going to save a civilization, and if you don't vote, of course, you're sexist, racist, xenophobe, fascist, Nazi, transphobe, and the list is getting very long. I can't quite.
Homophobe and Islamophobe you left out.
Right, Islamophobe. We can't forget that, and homophobe. And so the strategy of libertarians, or classical liberals and libertarians, has to be to follow the populist revolution. So populism has been this great force against these three wicked, perverse branches of government, and it is in the populace that you can still find common sense, because we can talk and talk and talk about just how bad the media is, just how bad Hollywood is right now. But the people are not so crazy, especially, I would say, I would raise the voting age to at least 26, 27, to make sure that everybody has a job and is paying taxes. You don't want to, because, of course, this continuous university expansion, everybody has to go to college, has formed a bubble around young people which now reaches even into the 30s sometimes. So apart from this group, in the real world population, they are following the populist revolution, especially when they inhabit so-called diverse neighborhoods, or all of this. The population sees with its own eyes. Eyes don't lie. The words can lie, but the eyes don't lie. So whatever the word masters of the day happen to be saying, it becomes more and more irrelevant.
Populism is fine when the majority of the population are sane, rational, decent, and at least semi-educated. But my point is that that is not where we are now. And in a situation where the majority of the population are insane, irrational, and indecent, and democracy rules. Democracy, the very first objectivist in New Zealand was a chap called William Waddell. He was a Brit. But he used to say, you know what democracy is? Democracy is count heads regardless of their content. And that's a safe exercise if the content of their heads is good. If it's evil, vicious, and stupid, which it is now in the majority of cases, then democracy or populism is very bad. So, of course, I'm reassured by the ongoing endurance of the Trump base. And in fact, it seems more enthusiastic than ever, because people are lining up in the dead of night for a rally the next day, and the queues go on for miles, and there are far more people who can't get in than can. But it's the objective fact still seems to be, and we'll know for sure on Wednesday, that as I like to call them, the subhumans or the zombies now outnumber actual human beings. In the meantime, of course, you've got the Soros Binswanger Express headed up to America through Mexico from Central American countries. And you've got, did you notice this? The Koch brothers, funders of leftist Ayn Rand Institute, have announced they're going to campaign against Trump's proposal to end the anchor baby phenomenon, where people just come in from any old shithole country or from anywhere at all, pop out a baby, and that baby is automatically an American citizen. Trump has said he's going to end that. The Koch brothers are now going to pour millions of dollars into a campaign to oppose Trump on that issue. So since I know you conscientiously tune into Yawan Book's broadcasts on behalf of leftivism, expect to hear him wailing and wanting against Trump's proposal on the matter of anchor babies. Just thought I should get that in, since we're talking about the deterioration, the corruption of authentic American culture by alien influences. It's still happening at the border, it's still happening with anchor babies, and obleftivism supports it.
Yes, well, as I've said before, I think that is the most important thing that he should get done. And if he can do it with a executive order, well, that would be quite something, now wouldn't it? Now, of course, the 14th Amendment, it was never intended to give citizenship to some Mexican woman who just went through the Rio Grande or something. And of course, these people know what they're doing. I even know people, in Milan. One day, this friend of mine, he was a exchange student from Russia. I was in collusion with Russia, and he met this quote unquote American at university. There's a lot of exchange students, right? And an American. Okay, let's meet this American person. And so I meet this American person, and he has a Mexican flag on his wall, and he is in fact a Mexican person who just so happens to have been plopped out on the other side of the border, and then consequently, of course, immediately returned to Mexico. So it's a very, people go on vacation to bathe and suntan. No, these people go to vacation to have children. So you have, where did you have your children? Oh, I had it in El Paso. And oh, where did you have your first child? Oh, I had it in this or that place. So he was never in the States. He, of course, was Mexican, and this person has the same right to vote as me, for example.
Yeah, well, you see, that's absurd, and that's why I say it should become a paramount project for the coalition of the civilized to restrict the franchise, to disenfranchise morons, and also be much more careful about whom we allow in to our respective countries. It might interest you to know that in Australia, slightly to the north of us, but still way to the south of the universe, they have a sort of declaration of value loyalty that you have to sign up to before you can become an Australian citizen. It's a little bit like your Pledge of Allegiance to the flag in America. In Australia, they say this: from this time forward, I pledge my loyalty to Australia and its people, whose democratic beliefs I share, whose rights and liberties I respect, whose laws I uphold and obey. This is now being honoured more in the breach than in the observance, because there's a whole lot more Muslims there now, in Sydney and Melbourne in particular, who are leering up. In New Zealand, we have no such declaration at all, but one is being proposed by a member of parliament who happens to be a member of the minority party of the governing coalition. And he wants a declaration that people have to sign up to become permanent New Zealand citizens that is very similar to the Australian one, but it also contains a provision they have to commit not to campaign against alcohol. And I thoroughly applaud that alcohol is being recognised as a foremost core New Zealand value. But of course, it's being attacked by opponents of this proposed bill as being aimed at Muslims, as being a roundabout way of stopping Muslims coming in. In which case, again, I thoroughly applaud it, but would just say we should be quite open and explicit about it. Not one Muslim in the current state of affairs in the world, a free society or semi-free society, a civilized society, has the right to stop people coming in whose adherence is to a religion that wants to impose Sharia law and a worldwide caliphate and wants to exterminate its opponents. We have the absolute right to do that, and we should say so without hiding under the guise of oh, you can't campaign against alcohol. Admirable and all, though such a prohibition might be. So that's the state of things here in New Zealand, but I'm very anxious we should get this coalition of the civilized going as quickly as possible. What do you say, Mr. Optimist?
Well, it seems like the cops are coming to get us after
Oh, that's you.
Speaking of Muslims.
No, well, that means that you've become a Talistan the way Britain has become Britonistan, because, you know, in Britonistan, they have 900 police who are members of the hate crime unit, and that's what they do. They go out and arrest people, they knock on their doors and arrest them. People who've published something online critical of Islam, the hate crime police go out and arrest them. So the sirens have stopped, they must be at the door already.
No. I don't live in Britonistan, thank goodness. That God-forsaken place. I don't know what happened. No, Italy does not have such hate crime enforcement. And if anything, the cops are all on our side. So,
bravo, bravi.
Yes, because remember the insidious bureaucratization of the state includes diversity and inclusion garbage in the Anglosphere especially, and that this goes all the way down to the police. So even the police has diversity and inclusion. So there's not enough cops of this or that, which of course means there's not enough Muslim cops. And you know, there's a funny meme that floated around months ago, where this old white woman is being checked at the airport, you know, patted down by a Muslim with a veil as the police officer, right? So no, the Italy is not in this place at all.
Well,
however,
are you confident it never will be?
Oh, it never will be. Never.
Oh, that is optimism, because everything that I read indicates that all of Europe, including Italy, is succumbing.
Well, remember, Italy is half non-Europe, so we're safe. If push comes to shove, the mafiosi will just start roaming the streets, and they'll clean them up, you know, the old style way. Of course, there is. I think there is a positive aspect to this barbaric element in Italy, which is in fact that men are still men, and men are, you know, kind of brutish and patriarchal. And this is very good. This is very positive, of course. And so I'm not too worried about Italy. But let me just say how much I approve of the pro-alcohol message of this proposed pledge. So many people who do not appreciate the value of alcohol, I am very skeptical of. Except Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the exception because he has his reasons why he doesn't drink alcohol, but there's always exceptions to the rule.
Well, that's if I were to fault him, that would be the reason. But then reality would compel me to acknowledge that probably if he were a drinker, he would not be able to sustain this superhuman, really, I mean, it's an overused word, unbelievable, incredible, but his energy levels are incredible and unbelievable. And I've seen him do 2 rallies today. I think there's another 2 tomorrow. And poor old Obama, Obermarks, he's been on the campaign trail doing 1 a day, and he's lost his voice already. Best thing he ever did. Should have done it 12 years ago. But yes, our Donald is incredibly, unbelievably phenomenal. And I hear the bell ring, so that's it for this week. And when we speak next, we'll know whether your optimism or my pessimism has been vindicated.
Yes, indeed. So much for now, everyone, and
Well, we should still end with our usual positive, optimistic 3, 2, 1. MOGA!
MOGA, everyone!
Objectivism great again.
And repudiate oblectivism.
Repudiate oblectivism. Oh, and remember, MOFA, make Orwell fiction again. Yes, unlike Britannistan, make Orwell fiction again.
Yes, I think Britannistan is Orwell. I mean, Orwell.
It is.
These Brits have gone off the rails.
Those are the thought police, the ones who go around 900 in the hate crime unit arresting people door to door. All right, that's definitely it.
All
Bene
right.
bene. Buongiorno.
Ciao, Linzio.